class, brainstorming the qualities they'll need as criminal investigators. At lunchtime, they visit the CCTV control room in Leeds, where they're told how important video footage can be in any police inquiry. It's an area they'll have to remember when they play the murder game. Let's hope they're paying attention. When they get back to the training centre, waiting for them is a masterclass from one of Britain's leading scenes of crime officers.
I am, for want of a better term, the hunter-gatherer of the sort of the forensic world. I spend my whole life, what's this, what's that, what's the other? Now today I'm not just going to be talking to you, you are actually going to be looking at potential crime scenes. You are going to be learning how to fingerprint, how to take elimination fingerprints, how to take DNA samples from each other. All of these could be relevant later on.
Crime scene management is the bread and butter, or the very basis that the investigations are founded upon. If you don't get that right, then you're struggling to recover what you've lost at the scene.
It's making sure that wherever possible, we can ensure that when we do get to a court situation, we can present correct, accurate evidence that hasn't been tainted and hasn't been contaminated.
Almost everything Jill teaches the trainee investigators today will be tested in the murder game. They quickly realise how crucial the session is and start scribbling furiously.
Your scene is whatever it turns out to be. Your scene can be a house. Your scene can be a room. Your scene can be a person. Your scene can be a field. Your scene is whatever can give you potential evidence. When I walk through a door into a crime scene, I actually start at floor level. Is the carpet fibres all pilled because somebody's tried to clean off something on the floor? Then you work your way up. Anything up the walls that's of interest. Has the picture been moved? Is the picture missing? I'm taking in what's there, what's not there.
When the murder game begins, the investigators are going to be responsible for identifying and protecting any crime scenes they encounter. Jill takes the group outside to examine the scene of a break-in that she prepared earlier by climbing through the classroom window.
Any footprints in the grass, wet grass?
That's scuff marks. Is that sort of
The wire,
footprints up towards it?
the wire, the cables hanging, skid mark.
Will the way they physically approach a crime scene during the murder game cause them to miss or even destroy a piece of critical evidence, such as a footprint or fibre?
There's two actually. You've got footprints, haven't you?
As investigators, they must have the patience and professionalism to notice every clue a scene has to offer, not just the most obvious.
Don't go too close, Rory.
Oh, something definitely on there.
On the radiator? Mm-hmm.
You've done a very methodical job. You've noticed the leaves on the floor. You've noticed the scuff marks up the wall. You've noticed the fingerprints on the outside and on the inside. The only thing I'm grateful for is that there isn't any CCTV footage of me actually coming through, because undignified wasn't in it.
When it comes to placing a suspect in a crime scene, few pieces of physical evidence are as useful as fingerprints.
Fingerprints are very, very delicate things. And the last thing you want to do is sort of hit it hard with an emulsion brush and take it through. It's all about being delicate. It's all about sort of gently processing the article that you have. It's not like painting. It's a much, much more delicate art. The best way to learn is to be thrown in at the deep end. You're definitely in at the deep end, ladies and gentlemen. Sounds like you've got the same joy I get every time I get one. That is a very, very good effort. Very, very good.
I thought I'd filled it all in at first, but when you hold it up to the light...
Yes.
The trainee investigators will need to absorb all they can concerning fingerprinting techniques, because later in the murder game, their success will depend upon it.
Just to give you a demonstration, the reason I said light application to start with is if you put it on too hard, you can actually end up filling in your mark.
The implications of bad crime scene management are very serious. ultimately at court you could lose the case. That's not good, because if you don't do your job professionally, if you don't do it with integrity, not only are you letting yourself down in the service, but more importantly, you're letting the victim and the victim's family down. And we can't allow that.
When the investigators are playing the murder game, the penalty for mistakes will also be high. They may cost them their place on the investigation.
You are a blank sheet of paper upon which your investigation will be drawn. Consider everything, assume nothing, dismiss nothing, no matter how insignificant it looks.
Before they can call it quits for the day, they're called back into class to be taught the ins and outs of alibis, timelines, ethics and confidentiality. It's what Leo and George would call a full schedule.
Today's not been too bad, can't lie.
A lot of work covered today, interesting work. Hope that will come in handy next week. It feels like I've been here for about 3 days.
I'd quite happily go to bed like now.
I think we've got off quite lightly today. I'm hoping the pace will pick up a little bit. My name's Richard Sharrocks, I'm 32, I'm a commercial pilot and I'm married to Julie. We live in Northumberland with our budgie, our 2 dogs and our 2 horses.
Superfit Richard leads a very full life. In a good year, he'll squeeze the odd 60-mile marathon in, and he spends most of his free time running and cycling around hilly Northumbria. Currently, he makes his living flying jumbo jets all over Europe, but prior to that, he was an army helicopter pilot.
I've been out of the army now a couple of years, and I think that in those couple of years I've mellowed a bit. So I'm hoping that people aren't going to look at me and think, oh, you know, he's an army officer, he's telling us to do this, that and the other, and we're not his soldiers.
Richard's military career took him to Northern Ireland and Bosnia, among other regions of instability, where his natural leadership skills enabled him to become a platoon commander.
I'd like to think that my role within the group is going to be a bit of a leader. I don't necessarily like following, but there again, if there's a very good leader, I will quite happily follow them. However, if there's not, I'll want to push myself to the front and say, no, I think I should take charge of this.
I think there are a couple of things about Richard which will make him a good investigator. He's got a very logical mind, and he's got a degree in mathematics, but so it probably does show that there is some logicality there. He can be impatient to get results, and he may upset people in his impatience to get there.
I'd always considered being a detective or joining the police and hopefully going on to be a detective if I was so lucky. And so I'm looking forward to actually having that opportunity to do something that I'd always thought of as a career.
One of the biggest problems for the police is on the identification front. So what we decided to do was stage an incident on the Monday afternoon whilst the students were having coffee.
The lady came down the stairs and dropped her box, which made such a clang that everybody looked.
I have to say that as the thing dropped, whether it's the housewife in me, but the first thing I was thinking of was picking up all this mess.
3 or 4 of our wonderful investigators rushed to help.
Anyway, she picked up all these things, or we helped her as well, and then she scuttled off. Nothing more was thought of it.
And so it was quite a surprise the next day for them to suddenly make us all think about that incident again and say, right, describe that woman.
Yesterday, the trainees were asked to identify the qualities they as individuals would need as investigators. The whole group felt that being observant was among the most important. They were right. Although barely a day has gone by, they are finding their memories poor allies.
What are we going to start with?
Male, female.
We're all going female?
White female.
5'4" to 5'6", I thought.
I'm short. I put short.
Anything less than 5'3"?
Going.
Right.
Identification is a difficulty in that various people could view an incident and have a different perception of what that person looked like that was involved in the incident.